Good morning. Welcome back to Factotum Life. Back out in the garage today, and we're going to be making an oil change video update progress report on our 2011 Grand Caravan that I've been making videos on for maybe the last year and a half. So to sort of recap what is going on here, back in August of 2024, I set out to explain that at the time our 231,000 mile Grand Caravan seemed like it was starting to consume a little bit of oil. And at that time, I could go maybe 4,000 miles on 1 quart of oil. The idea with the oil change videos was that I was going to utilize the Valvoline Restore and Protect and see if I could maybe clean up the ringlands of the pistons and improve the oil consumption. In those oil change videos, I ranged in mileage about every 4,000 miles to, at one point I went down to 3,000 miles per quart. And the rule at that time was I would drive the vehicle as I normally would with the Restore and Protect. And as soon as the oil level dropped below or dropped to the 1 quart low, that would be, I wouldn't add any oil. That would be the point where I would be changing the oil, would document what the filter looked like, talk about what the oil, the visual cue would look like, and then we would move on. And so the first few oil changes were about 4,000 miles. And then I made one around Thanksgiving where I discussed how the oil consumption was 3,000 miles. So clearly heading in the wrong direction. As I moved into the last summer and then summer of 2025, and then now, which is spring of 2026, I've had 3 oil changes that have been relatively consistent at 5,000 miles per 1 quart of oil. And this most recent oil change, I made it up to about 5,500 miles. The goal was 1 quart low. I made a video on why I moved away from the Valvoline Restore and Protect. And I am not afraid of the oil. I think it's a fantastic oil. But for the purposes of sort of trying things out and seeing what is going on, I've been migrating to some different oils. And I made a video talking about I use the Valvoline Extended Protection oil, which has been a fantastic oil for this vehicle. I think I've done 3 oil services with it. And that's generally what I've been using and been able to achieve the 5,000 to 5,500 mile per quart of oil service interval. So now that leads us to today. And what I'm going to be doing is we're going to migrate a little bit thicker oil. And this is we're going to find out if that improves. And right now, today, as we sit, I have 271,000 miles and change. Let's check. Yeah, 271,813 miles. So we are about 5,800 miles on this oil change, 5,700, somewhere in that range. And so what I'm going to be doing now is one of the last oil change videos that I did on this vehicle where I did an oil sample. I sort of discussed the results and why I was staying with the Valvoline Extended Protection with what appeared to be the increased amounts of molybdenum, the noise of the engine, the way it operated, the oil consumption. Overall, I was pretty happy with it. I did theorize that if I went to a thicker oil, I could maybe cut down on the oil consumption. And that's simply based on the idea that this vehicle is 15 years old. It has 271,000 miles on it. And, the thinner the oil, the more it's going to migrate past all of the various worn seals and parts. And that alone is one reason not to go forward anymore with this type of stuff, because in essence, it's a worn out car. Okay. However, it's worn out, but it's not worn out. Like it's still, to me, it still has a fair amount of life left in it. And I'm personally trying to get to 300,000 miles. And then at that point, I might relegate it to a secondary third vehicle type situation. So we're going to be doing an oil change with the European 5w-40 from Valvoline. Beyond running this in the vehicle, I think this is a good time to do this test because right now it's mid-May. We're going to be entering hot weather. The way I used to drive this is that I would put about 25 miles on at a time, going down the freeway, and then 25 miles back. And it had a very limited extended freeway drive time. And I point that out because it's entirely possible that the driving style that I had with this vehicle back 2016, 17, still had an oil consumption issue, but it's entirely possible that the way I drove the vehicle, the oil never achieved the temperature enough where the consumption became very prevalent. Now, I don't have a gauge on this oil, so I can't tell you that, driving the vehicle, 25 miles, what the oil temperature is getting up to versus driving the vehicle for, 4 hours. Um, I do take right now, we take a lot of trips that are about 8 hours. And so that's about 450 miles where I stop 2 to 3 times out of that 450-mile trip. So the engine's good and hot for quite a long time. And if you have an engine that has, seals that are worn out or, an oil control ring that is stuck, that's going to be a good opportunity for it to start to show. Um, so let's see what happens. What I'm going to do is we'll do the oil change with the 5w-40, run it to realistically probably 1 quart of oil again. If that gets us to 5,000 miles, that will be probably July that'll be changing the oil. If I can get a little bit further, maybe I'll get a little bit further and we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll be August, but in any case, I'll drop the oil, we'll do an oil sample on it and compare it to the Valvoline Extended Protection, compare it to the Valvoline Restore and Protect, and have a discussion on it. So, all right, here.